Okay, welcome. Hello to this special edition of Talking Heads, a developer on developer conversation series. We're here for Cerebral Puzzle Showcase, and I am Murray Silverwolf. I was the creative director on Waxheads, which is a puzzle narrative record store game, which is my one plug I'll do right now because it released 3 weeks ago. So, yeah, cool. But more importantly, I'm here today with Paul Conway, who is, if I've got this right, you're the CEO of Spooky Doorway?
That's correct.
That's
Yes.
correct. Perfect. And you also, most importantly, just have had the release of the Séance of Manor, which is one of the main things we're going to talk about today. But Paul, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I am very, very hot. I don't know what it's like in Ireland, but at the moment we've got this heat wave going on, and although I live in East Midlands, England now, I am Scottish by heart, and I do not deal well with humidity. It does no to no way. But
It's
never mind.
it has been very hot here, but it hasn't been the same sort of temperature you guys are getting. It's kind of broken today, so it's only 17 degrees here in Galway, so
Oh, okay.
it was quite pleasant. I was melting yesterday inside my studio. It was like 30 degrees, which was quite intense. My fan was
Yes.
doing nothing. Um, but yeah, it's we're back to kind of some normal human, Irish English human
Yes.
temperatures.
Yeah. 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 It's not, at least you're able to use your brain in some way. Um.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Like just to. I'm going to jump in because I have been playing the Saints Blake Manor this week, and I'm absolutely, I'm completely taken by it. I think it's just everything about it, like the atmosphere, the whole genre of like detective and the puzzle deduction, but with the horror, like spooky elements to it. Everything seems to really just sing in this way where I was instantly hooked. And so I have to ask, where did the original idea for the game come from?
The very original idea kind of came from uh, a reaction to another failed project we'd done.
Mm.
We we'd experimented with this game called Sunken Spectre, which was it was a narrative game, but it was like had this diving ed sort of mechanic to it, where you'd kind of dive and sort of explore places like a swimming Tomb Raider or something like that.
Mm.
And, it wasn't good what we made. We kind of weren't developers who were good at those kind of like real sort of game feel, game twitch control sort of things. And it was our first 3D game as well. So when we were working on it, the whole pipeline got very long with kind of characters and all that sort of stuff. And it didn't look very different from other indie games as well. Like, and as an artist, I like to play with things which are kind of unique or just have a little bit of an angle which feels unique to me at least. Um, and yeah, that demo came together, failed. Nobody wanted to support it, and I kind of just in my spare time just started messing around with like with ideas of things I liked. Like I was kind of looking back at my childhood as of the things that I enjoyed. And I grew up with like my dad telling me lots of ghost stories and ghost stories of Dublin, and grew up watching a lot of Victorian era TV shows. In like the 1980s Sherlock Holmes and stuff like that always fascinated me, and so Dublin's full of Victorian history as well. And I just started playing with ideas like that. And one thing that we as a studio has always wanted to do was actually somehow get Irish culture properly into a game, to get Irish voices into a game instead of like Irish Americans.
Mm.
Yeah, like we'd seen so many representations done poorly of Irish culture by not made by Irish people. Um, like older games, like even Broken Sword, they go to Ireland and they fight a goat. There's nothing that was felt
Mm.
really Irish about it.
Yeah.
Even though like there's Irish people in the studio now, and even some of my favorite games of ours of mine, even like years ago, like Clive Barker's Undying had like an Irish character, but he was being voiced by an American guy, and it sounded terrible. And the mythology wasn't Irish at all. So yeah, I was wanting to work with stuff like that. Like at studio, we'd always wanted to work with something like that, but never kind of got to it. And then in my spare time, I started messing around with this idea of somebody investigating an Irish manor with Irish ghosts and Irish mythology at the core of the story.
Mm.
And it kind of found its legs properly when I started playing around with comic book art style. Um, it started to feel like something that was interesting. It had an interesting angle to it visually, an interesting way to tell stories, and using panels to kind of to focus on objects, or to focus on or bring art in close and detailed and stuff like that. And it was cheaper than other art forms because it was very 2D, and I'm more of a 2D guy than a 3D guy. And yeah, like when I started playing around with that, doing tests, I started to kind of get interest on the internet. Like it was stopping
Yeah.
people scrolling through Twitter, and they were seeing it and reacting to it. And some publishers were asking about it early as well. Like, what's the story? This is something you're working on, and can we talk to you about it? So I brought it back to the Spooky Doorway team. I had this kind of rough start of a demo, and I kind of said, like, this is kind of what I want to make. There's interest in it, and that other demo we worked on didn't do so well. We're working on None of the Dark Side, but this could be the thing that we work on after it. And thankfully they agreed. The Dave and Trassa, the two people who own Spooky Door with me, they were into the idea. They're very into Irish stories and Celtic mythology. Even Trassa is a practicing pagan.
Oh.
So they were full on board to do it. And my original idea, like the was like, a detective from Dublin goes to the west of Ireland, out to Connemara, to this hotel to search for a missing woman. And there was mythology on it or whatever, but like it wasn't much deeper than that. Like a lot of depth was added by our writer Dave, like really kind of putting the work in to kind of find ways to make a murder mystery sort of setup be interesting in a video game. Like how many characters you need, what's interesting about them, what kind of mythology to lean on, and what type of story you can tell. So while the DNA of my original idea is there, like throughout the whole thing, like it definitely was a group kind of thing that brought together to be what it is today.
I'll waste no time, as there's none for wasting. I write from Blake Manor in Connemara. Yesterday, a guest went missing. A young woman named Evelyn Dean. Everyone here carries on as if nothing has happened. She has not left. Of that I am sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's fascinating to hear, to be honest, because when you explaining it, there's so much stuff, especially in development, which I can completely relate to. Like what if not, before working in Waxhead, other games I've worked on hadn't had necessarily been commercially successful. So I've been looking more to be not you don't make decisions based on, oh, I want to make a game to sell lots of money, but it's more for me about you want to be sustainable, right? You want to make something which is like I want to keep doing, I want to keep being a dev.
Yeah.
And so just I can see how taking the foundations of the idea of like going back to it's just such a great synergy, the idea of like the way you mentioned with Sherlock Holmes, like that 19th century, the Victorian like kind of because one of the questions I wanted to ask you was how you landed on it's a period piece on that particular time, but even as you explain it, a lot of that now it seems like it was very reactive to like your environment, your surroundings, and things of interest. So it makes complete sense. And
Yeah, it was organic to get there,
yeah.
and I think though as well, it thematically to the story it suits very well because it was the age of spiritualism. It
Hmm.
was an era where like science and technology and the industrial revolution were changing the world.
Hmm.
Like people had electricity in their homes in London. The medicine was much better. The the old ways of like folklore and superstition were being shunned out, but people still believed in it as
Yeah.
well. Like there was there's always like all over the UK and Ireland, there like there were still superstitions of like don't go around that church 3 times or the devil will appear, or
What?
don't mess with the free folk or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. What I really like, what I thought was really what I really loved about it is how grounded it is in that whole like exploration of the time where it's never melodramatic. Like you've got characters where within that world there's a spectrum of people who like who believe in magic and spiritualism. Obviously, like our protagonist is skeptical, but like is he tested on that right from the jump. But I thought it was really interesting the amount of characters where how rational it's so rationalized. There's like there's not like one person who's like, oh, I'm like a kook or like a crazy kind of person. It really interrogates the idea of spiritualism at this time from a really serious place, which I thought really as a player it really grounds you in it because it makes you to go like even straight away that the device of the green um because it's
Yeah, the gauge
the
device. Yeah,
gauge, yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Like even that, there's a certain grounding in it when you see it that it's both like otherworldly, but also kind of rooted in a well, yeah, like it makes sense. It's got a gauge, it's got a dial, it's got a very matter of fact kind of feel to it. So I think
yeah.
it's quite remarkable to hear um how much of the obviously like you say with the how actually well like I'll turn my point into a question. How big was the development team in the end on the project?
Um, it was a bit of a revolving door throughout.
Yeah, sure.
The at our biggest, we were like 16 to 20 people.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
like with a lot of artists at one point. Like I had like so I went from being the sole artist to being the lead artist and art director.
Hmm.
Uh, and we had I think it's like three, four, five maybe other artists work with me because there's just a lot of props in it,
Yeah.
and there's a whole 2D side to it and 3D side to
Yeah.
it.
I mean, there's a
So
lot
there's
of characters.
a lot of characters. We had a lot of QAs working with us as well. It was one of those games
Okay.
that just needed to play it.
Yeah.
Not even just to find bugs. Like the game was so big for us that it was even hard for us and particularly the writing design team to kind of keep the whole game in their heads and sort of as a player as well as coming up with the next content and
Well, I'm not surprised at all. Because like
yeah.
it's what I don't know if you do this when I play games. Like I have that kind of like how is a sausage made kind of thing, and as I was playing it, I tried to reverse engineer, going like, how would I go about setting up all of these interweaving relationships and like the characters were and then because there's one thing there's a story element of that, but then also then the puzzle element interweaved in with it as well, and especially like it's so sophisticated with your who done it with the hypothesis and all that kind of stuff that I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like it feels very I mean, it comes across like playing the game. It feels like a very well-oiled machine. So I can definitely see that with like all the QA and the people you're talking about being involved in that process, that it was necessary, but it was very effective. But at the same time, it definitely boggles my brain where I'm like, whoa, like, yeah,
Yeah, but it was necessary. Some
yeah,
like so very necessary because like about a year into development, like when we got to kind of the vertical slice of the game,
mm.
it was dead on arrival. It was a bad game.
Oh gosh, okay,
It wasn't even a bad game. It was worse. It was a boring game.
okay,
Um, the we had approached it very differently at the start in terms of the story being less open and
mm-hmm.
more chapter based. The some of the mechanics, like the time mechanic, wasn't in there, and like how data was even stored, like in your inventory, was very
Mm-hmm.
different. And like it ended up being more very very dull than like if it's such a big expansive place, but it started getting very artificially gated. Like you can't leave this room until you solve these 6 mysteries,
Right, okay,
and like as a player, you ended up without much agency.
mm-hmm.
You couldn't you didn't have space to fail, which I think is probably one of the things that stands to it so or makes it work for people is that kind of the possibility of failure, the feeling that you can fail. like it's very well balanced. I'd argue, like, it favors the player. We want you to succeed, but you can fail, and you feel like you can fail. But yeah, we hit a point. It was terrible, and Tressa, our lead designer, came back from maternity leave, and she had this idea. She'd mentioned it before even gone maternity leave, but she had this idea of adding this sort of time economy system, which is in the game now. And I had my doubts about it. Like, I'll put my hands up and say I really wasn't sure about it, because it was new, but also it was so super hard to balance, and felt really punishing in so many ways. But as a lead dev, she could just over weekend like fire away and just add in the system that would suddenly kind of turn every interaction into it costs a point. And yeah, that turned around. Took a long time to balance it, but that was the key thing that kind of changed its direction to being, the exciting and deep and curious place it is now. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely. I've got so many questions because I had because especially the time thing, that was something that really stood out to me because I loved it. I really loved the like in the very beginning where right from the get go you've got like, hey, you're going to be shown to your room at 12, and you're trying to like solve this little the first kid in mystery of like trying to get the letter of oh,
yeah,
like all the names are kind of all like because they're all in my head like all wishing washing around, but like you're trying to like that first initial just kind of like premise. And I I'm someone like I played a lot of RPGs when I was younger. I'm very story exhaustive, so I really love clicking on everything, like anything where it's like have a look at that. I'm like, well, I want to click on it because you put it there. What is it? Why is it there? What's a little bit of
yeah,
dialogue? And I really loved that but it gave me this kind of jeopardy of like, okay, but I can like maybe click on five more things, but I've got like and then it was kind of I think I solved it, and I was like, oh, I can click on a few more things now. But then it still went to me, oh no, but you've got to do this one last thing before it closes the loop. And I was like, oh crap. Like it's like, okay,
yeah.
I've got two things left. And I liked it because of the premise and the context, of the like you're like the detective, and obviously you're like trying to it's the and I like the idea of where people are going to be in certain rooms, so there's that real like puzzling element to it of kind of and I like things where I like mechanics where it actually gets you to the mechanic itself, or the exercise of the puzzle gets you to immerse yourself in that kind of role play. So the idea of actually having to work out this character is going to be in this room at this time, so now I can go to the room and try and do that because of it. And the way you mentioned, because it's open, it's more expansive, and I can see why if it was more linear, why that would then feel a bit more on rails. But because it feels more opened up now, that felt very exciting to me. So yeah, I've got to ask you with the balancing because one thing, and especially with the art, you mentioned about having the assets. So did you was it did you do it from like a gut instinctual kind of viewpoint, or was it actually you were working out we have X amount of items and things you can read and click on in this space of time, and you've like say there's 20 things which you can click on, but you only have time for 10. Were you working it out that way, or were you kind of more doing it a bit more and like on feel?
Um, so I'd love to be able to say that like we had it really planned out
Yeah.
and really figured out. But no, it was more like we had the environment pretty much built or planned and laid out and where every room was going to be before we got to the point where we got to the time system.
Yeah.
And as I said, like it wasn't an exciting game, but it had the goods. It had a great premise, had a great
Hmm.
story, great characters,
Great voice
great
acting.
location. Everything was great, but it was just still arriving dull as dishwater.
Hmm.
Um, and so we added the time mechanic in there, and it was just a matter of experimentation and iteration, and like
Hmm.
just seeing like early versions of it, like you too many clicks,
Right.
or a version of it had like, like you couldn't actually advance time, so like you might be literally running around the house looking for that one book you haven't clicked on yet just to get to the next minute. And
Right.
trust me, that's duller than a linear story that doesn't let you do anything.
Yeah.
uh, so there's a lot of iteration there, and yeah, it was a we tried different measurements of like, every click was a half a minute instead of a full minute.
Right.
um, and it just made so much more sense where a click was a minute on average, and
Yeah.
that was easier for people to digest, to understand. And then it just ended up being a lot of playthroughs, a lot of people come back with feedback, a lot of figuring out how to signpost things better. So we want you to go and click on this. We want like this, or make this object that you really need to click on is more obvious in a room, rather than clicking on all the books and everything.
Mm.
Um, I do think earlier on though, like it does teach you, especially in those first two tutorial sections, which really put the time pressure on you
Yeah.
before it loosens up. Um, it really tries to teach you that like focus. It's a system that makes you think. Like
Hmm.
you can't force it. Like our dark side detective adventure game is, I've seen people literally just grab items out of the inventory and just throw it on every hotspot on the screen looking for the solution. They're not
Yeah.
really thinking about
Brute
it. They're
forcing
just
it.
trying, yeah, to get into the next joke or the next moment, but they're not
Hmm.
really trying to think it through. And that's not necessarily a detective experience. Like we
Yeah.
wanted you to stop and think. So it really lent itself a lot to that. So in a way, it didn't matter how many objects there were there. Once we taught the player to think about what they're clicking and why they're clicking it, it stopped people from literally going into every single like teacup in a room, and
Yeah.
every pillow or everything like that, trying to click on it. Like not that there's hotspots and absolutely everything, but like there's a bit of balancing from experience as playing it and figuring out where we were giving people too much time or too little time, or causing sort of confusion, mixed with teaching the player just to think about what they're doing, to what their actions should be.
Yeah. I think you did it. I think it really works. It really pays off because I'm a really big fan of what I like with this because it's funny from the next game that I wanted to make. I before actually playing Blake Manor, but then it was nice it reinforced it. I wanted to play around with the time moves on with the with interactions because what I especially like about it in a puzzle context is that there's not a penalty for thinking, right? Like you can spend as much time as you want looking at the evidence and thinking, but it's then the executing, like executing stuff actually, doing that kind of stuff makes you go, okay, right, well, do I want to do I want to click on, like, am I sure? Do I want to do this? Do I want to, like, even though some of the conversations I was finding myself going, oh, like, like it almost get like this push your luck situation of going,
Yeah,
but I feel like I could get a little bit more out of my bang for my buck if I just kind of ask. But I want to make sure I don't, like, those things feel like they're not going to go anywhere. So I'll know that and I'll go for this. So it definitely, I think it definitely empowers the player in this, and it doesn't feel like, I feel like it's one of those weird things as well, like the way, like when you say half a minute, if an action half, it has that weird feeling, right? Like halves feel weird, but one, because it's a whole number, you're like, that's nice. And the fact that everything is like 1 minute, it doesn't feel scary, even though you come up against those, like, time constraints where it starts to go, oh, you've got 5 minutes left, like, you're like,
yeah,
okay, but it's still, it gives you enough of a it gives you enough of a margin that when you click on something you don't like it, it allows you to, to look at a painting or to look at something, it's not like where things go, if you look at this it's going to take 10 minutes and you go, oh my god, like that's, I don't want to click on that then. So I think the
yeah,
balancing, at least for everything I've seen so far, is really exquisite. And yeah, it's funny, I mean, go back to as well what you were saying about your development partner. It's funny how these things with, because I had that, like, we in Wax Heads we have like two modes where one is the original game works is that um when you're giving answers, if you give the wrong answer the game will kind of score it, but the game progresses and like that's it. And Ruthia went to me. She was like, "Oh no, we need to have a mode which like allows people, like if people really want to find out the right answer, it just allows them to keep trying." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know." And then she was like, "Well, just trust me." Like she made the system for it, and then the amount of feedback we've got of people going, "Oh, I'm so happy that mode exists," and I'm like, oh, "I'm so glad that I just trusted," and I didn't,
Yeah, there's a lot to be
yeah,
said for trusting your teammates, though.
yeah,
Like the time mechanic, which we're talking about here, and has been very well celebrated. Like, if it had been down to me, if that probably would not have happened, I would have pushed back very
yeah,
strongly. But I trust Tressa. There was only one time when we had to deliver a demo, which I said we should take it out now because it's wrecking what we're actually trying to show in the demo, not this particular
right,
thing. But and that was only just for that demo. But I never once said we have to take this out. Like it because I knew it was a new and interesting, and
yeah,
the work. You had to kind of just believe and see, and get to that finish line where the balance would all be in there. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, it's good when you have people people who listen to you and you listen to on your team. It's so valuable.
yeah, 100%. I think especially in indie, like even like you say, like being 16, 20 people, that's still like a small like team, right? And I think you've got to put a lot more stock in like on that decision making of going. I think trust, like yeah, I think trust is super super important. And you like, I mean, a lot of the time I'll be thinking, well, we haven't really got. It's not like you're not making things recklessly, but you're like just kind of going, okay, like do I have enough of do I disagree with this enough that I want to slow everything down and like you know get into the dirt about it? No. All right, cool. Then in that case, God, let's just do it. Like like here we go. What was it? So on the previous games you worked on, like have you led that many people before in terms of when you said about yourself becoming like a lead artist, like art director in that way? Is that the most you've had under as a team, or
But for us, certainly, yeah. Like
yeah?
I've managed small amounts of people before, like
Mm,
one or two artists here or there on different projects. But this one became, like, for us, gigantic. So very small in the grand scheme of teams.
sure.
But like we had to become leaders very quickly rather than just doers.
Hmm.
And some of us take to it more naturally than others. Yeah, it was certainly a challenge. But it helps if you work with the right people as well. They'll
Yeah.
the they'll help you along the way as much as you're trying to get like them to produce things for you. They'll definitely help you figure out what you need actually. But like, yeah, we'd gone from, like, we started off well, initially we were four people, and then we dropped down to three. One lad left the studio.
Mm,
Um, but we've always had kind of people coming in here and there. Like, so we've always had a couple of people knocking around, like, to help us out with, like, porting this or bug fixing
yeah.
there or whatever. So we weren't strangers to having people work with us. Um, but staffing up and sort of turning into departments rather than a group of people was certainly a new flavor to the company.
Yes?
Hello, I'm Declan Ward. I telegrammed ahead.
I see. We did not receive your message, Mr. Ward. Our telegraph machine is broken. Regardless, I am Vincent Varley, the manager here. We are quite full at present, but we can fit you in. I'll send word that a room should be prepared, and I'll show you to it as soon as is possible. It shall be no later than midnight. But first, we require our guests to sign in, if you would.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It sounds. I mean, I've not to that. I mean, I've worked with like the same where I've like had some people like Wax says we were 8 people at its most. With me and Ratheel like all the way through, but then we had like likewise like contractors, people who came in like, well, like I call them collaborators because it feels more honoring the role they had. But yeah, it's a funny thing when you go from, like, as you say, like a doer to like leading kind of stuff that I'm I find it hard to not in a controlling way, but I find it hard like that. I think my biggest problem is documentation. I find it very hard having everything documented. So I have the kind of problem of there's a lot of stuff in my head, and then that involves people having to have meetings with me to be like, okay, Murray, can you please, can you please explain this to me? And I'm like, yeah, it would be really good if I had this actually all written out right. People would be like, yeah, that would be helpful. Um, so when you were like doing the like when you moved into that role, were you still making like assets? Were you still like actually drawing as well, or was it of such a kind of like pipeline you had to like step back and just be like doing meetings, just like directing?
So I did still do some art in the game, but there's
Yeah.
less art in it than there's less things you can look at it and actually say Paul made that than in any
Okay.
other game. Like we had done an original demo of the game, which we
Mm.
were using to pitch to publishers to get the funding, and like I did all the art in that myself. Like it was a fairly sizable demo I did. Like I impressed myself with how much work we got done on that.
Mm.
That was still kind of more classic adventure game, but it had the atmosphere and vibes and style that it was enough to convince people to or convince Raw Fury to sign up to the project. Um, but when it went on to the full project, and we went to the full production, like I was more or less just drawing the concept art. My concept art's super loose.
Mm.
I had already defined the style and I had written a style guide.
Yeah.
And I got some feedback as well from our publisher in terms like recommendations they would have in terms of like what direction to take the art to kind of to veer away from certain things they're concerned about.
Mm.
Um, but they but mostly like I was either doing paint overs or draw overs in people's work to explain what I wanted on live
Yeah.
calls. We done an art call every day at about 10:30 every morning and went through every asset that people were working on with them, drew over paint overs on them, touched up certain textures, stuff like just to constantly just explain what I want and why it's a certain way that I want it, and that way everybody kind of knew what everybody in our team is doing, and everybody was kind of learning the nuances of what I wanted from it, and also I was learning kind of like
Yeah.
how to
Of
communicate
course.
because if you tell somebody to do A and you come back with B, you've got to figure out why they've come back with B.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of just that kind of workshopping with people every day, and in a way I became my own producer as well. Like we have a producer in the studio who was doling out kind of the main direction for us as an art team, but I had my own list of assets and tasks that I wanted people to work on, so I kind of
Yeah.
managed them that way as well. Because you can't expect a producer to know your grand plan for how many clocks and candles has to be in a building or whatever. So I needed to do it that way. I found very handy though. But I broke up the 3D artists into kind of different scales. Like so, I had the ones who were doing the larger stuff, like
Mm.
large stairs and walls and structures. People doing larger furniture, chairs, cabinets, tables, and then people doing the smaller stuff, which were the salt shakers and cups and knives and forks and all that. And that way you're always getting a certain like level of detail to flesh out a space for, with them. Um,
Yes. Yeah, that's really smart because then yeah, you've got that kind of because I'm a little bit like that. I kind of need to see if things are all a little bit too, how to put it? Like obviously you've got your grey box, your white box, whatever kind of stuff, but getting at that phase, I kind of need to get a sense of the shape of stuff because otherwise every time I'll be looking at it, I'm kind of going, it doesn't have to be polished, but if you've got everything just uneven, it's harder to get a kind of shape of how is this landing is an
yeah,
experience. Yeah, yeah. So totally. I mean, like again, the team, the art is exquisite. It's such a evocative place. Did you have like for the manor itself? Did you have is that based like somewhere locally to you? Is it like actually
it's
it's sorry.
it's based on a few places around Ireland.
Mm,
I went and visited a lot of big houses. They're called the big houses in Ireland, like the big manors and all
yeah.
that. So there's a place down south in Wexford called Loftus Hall, which is like allegedly one of Ireland's most haunted, if not the most haunted place in Ireland.
Okay.
And I've done a tour of it. I got to look at the grounds and got to speak to the staff there and ask a lot of questions. And I got to take a lot of pictures of the outside of it and sort of see how the building held together, and a lot of stories they told us as well, like about a lot of history of the place. Like it really informed the the type of history that was in Blake Manor, like the cruelty of like that kind of that landowner class. And they went to other places, like this place called Westport House, which is in the northwest of Ireland, and that's still a functioning house that kind of does all tours and events at it, and it's a lot like Loftus Hall is more run down. This is more preserved, and got to see their secret dungeons and their hidden rooms and stuff like that. Like so, this got to visit as many places. Kind of learned kind of roughly the structure of a house that makes sense. And the type of stonework you'd expect in it, the type of masonry and decoration you'd want to see around the place. So I don't know if I've been to like 3-4 different places. Got different inspirations. Like you could probably point at that gate is definitely from Calmore Abbey's gardens or something like that. There's just different.
Nice. But I like the idea of especially because the fact you've gone to these places and they are somewhat the fact you're living in Ireland, you're going to there's and circling back to what you were saying before about that more authentic representation about that more it's authenticity. So I think the fact that you've gone to these places and that because I mean that was the reason why I asked was because it really feels like a lived in and it's something important to me when I'm making stuff like digitally. I really like things to feel like when you're there, if you're making a digital world, you want it to feel lived in. You want it when someone is entering into that to feel like this is a place which, even if you're not hearing, like you're getting told some story, that there's more, even more like beyond that kind of stuff. That there's stuff in these walls, and I think the stuff you're suggesting to is why that it has that kind of presence. So I think it's cool, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of ended up building the house, and then a lot of elements changed. So actually, the size of the house became a problem at one point.
I was going to ask that. Yeah. Okay.
We were talking about removing some characters to try and get the budget a bit more under control, or get the timeline a bit more kind of shorter. And it was just too much work to remove the house. Then to go back then go forward. So we had to kind of make sure we had a cast to fill it out in the end. But yeah, like definitely, like we built it like in a house that makes sense. Like no bedroom will be in a place without a window. You have multiple points of access down to the two levels, and the basement would have a certain type of access. There's key places they'd want to get to, and all that. And like even just like bathrooms, how many real bathrooms would there really be? And you're really trying to think on how to distribute those. Yeah, it was it was an interesting challenge, but it was fun. Like to be drawing out them maps like a kid, and figuring out like your level design or something like that again on paper, and it's sort of a place that genuinely feels the right size for a story, but also feels like a real place, despite it looking like a comic book in 3D.
Terrible weather out, eh?
No, I mean, the comic book style of it, I think I'm not surprised in the way I think it's smart. It's something I did with Wax Heads. You put like a little bit out there to kind of see how people respond to it, and then when you kind of see that, that lightning rod of that kind of like synergy in a way, you're like, okay, cool. I think there's something here, and I definitely think that the streamlined the closest game I can think of not to not there in any way. I think it was Void Bastards. They did like a similar.
That was a big inspiration. Yeah, that
Yes.
was.
Okay. Perfect. If that makes sense, because the simplicity in the forms and then the characters are so um they've got so much kind of like that comic book style is kind of. Am I right in saying would it be a little bit of Mike Mignola like a little bit maybe?
I know totally. Like so I saw Void Bastards, and that triggered the memory of another game, which was Hotel Dusk, which had that kind of thing where I had 2D characters.
Oh, yes, yeah. I've not played it, but I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're kind of two key touch points in my brain where that kind of helped, like, really inform the start of the art style.
Mm.
But I saw what they were doing in Void Bastards, and I really appreciated like how well it popped visually and how
Yeah.
it's into my inner comic book nerd.
Mhm.
And it also done a thing where it bypassed the need for a character team, like,
Yeah.
because when you get to 3D characters, you have to have, like, you go from concept art to modeling, unwrapping, texturing,
Yeah.
rigging, animating, and all this kind of stuff. And it's a big long chain. Like, and we'd done it on a previous game where we'd had like people in doing that stuff for us, and it wasn't satisfactory. And then even at the end, when the 3D character comes out, it doesn't look like the original character enough.
Yeah.
Whereas I literally was drawing these characters, and they were in the space, and they were just living there already,
Yeah.
and it was amazing. I just loved it. But yeah, the my main inspirations were like Mike Mignola is
Yeah.
top of that list. There's Tim Sale. He passed away. He was a Batman artist.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. I think I know which one you mean. Yeah.
There's another guy, Eduardo Riso. He's a Brazilian artist. He does like 100 bullets.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
Batmans.
Yeah. Big fan of his work. Yeah.
There's a bit of Frank Miller in there. There's another guy, a British guy. His name's escaping right now. He used to
Kevin
do.
O'Neill? Or no?
No, it's Kevin something.
Okay.
Kevin Walker. Kevin Walker. That's it.
Yeah.
He was one of these guys who used to do like all the really highly detailed painted stuff, and he was
Mhm.
actually inspired by Mignola and
Yeah.
did his own really minimalist kind of black and white kind of art, and he had a unique take in it actually that really works more for me than even Mignola does.
Mm.
And like he was a big influence on me. Like, but I realized there's a type of art that comic art I like, which is lots of blacks, lots of clean shapes, no cross hatching or feathered lines or anything like that. It's very, very, very blocky and inky.
Yeah.
And like my original version of it was very much more that. I think actually the very first character I put into a test scene was a Mignola character I just quickly traced over and put a new head on, like, just to check it out. But there's so many little tricks in it just to get more black into the scenes, to make it look like Mignola or that sharp black and white comic art, which is like every surface that points downwards is black. So you have black ceilings, you have black kind of undersides, the stairs and all. And what it does, it just forces more ink onto the screen, so to speak. So whenever you stop, you're not just like looking at a wall of color; you're just always black somewhere on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, like I think and with the the setting and the atmosphere, everything, it all just like sings together. It's really, really, really effective. And also then you've got those the because I mean I really love the way, like, seeing how you mentioned about the way of avoiding all the requirements to get a 3D model, but also the way you work around those constraints, the way that you use timing, and the way of, like, doing like cut black to like bring a character in, but also you've got this really lovely like panel like little sequences, with where it's all cutting in, and these like kind of almost the comic book style comes in like a cutscene, and I think they are also really elegant, and it really just sometimes like it's really fun to see when an idea or direction is just like you can feel like it's hearing you talk about it, it's just like you landed on it, and then everything then just seemed to organically fit together and build on top of that, to the way of like going, I knew this was good, and I knew these parts worked together, and then as I started to build it up, it would just like like Lego would just like kind of like slot together and just like perfect harmony. So yeah, no, it's very cool.
Yeah, the comic panels became like a superpower for us.
I'm not
we
surprised.
we like we knew early on, but we leaned on it more and more as we were making it. Was like if we wanted to kind of get these emotional moments across in 3D, they would have been awkwardly animated. Our whole budget would have gone lip syncers and or a mocap or something to get that to do it. Like you stop at any point in that game and you're not moving, it looks like it's a 2D drawn space, or mostly does. and to pull in a panel and then have a moment of drama, or somebody's upset, or angry with you or something like that. Like it never felt jarring.
Mm.
It just felt like a seamlessly went from one to the other and then back into the 3D space. Like it was a moment. There was a lot of just serendipity with like ideas that can't come from the original formation, that as we evolved them, just made it stronger and stronger. And a lot of all the comic art was done by just all of the character art and comic art in the game was done by mainly just one artist, a young girl here in Galway. Now I did some of it, and another artist who was jumping between 2 and 3D did a few bits here and there, like the intro video and the odd thing here and there. But the vast majority of it was done by just one artist, and she was brilliant.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a chain of a concept artist, a modeler, a rigger, a texture, an animator. It was literally just one person. Like my budget went into one person, and it gave it a unique identity, and and with it we could broaden the canvas at any point. We could extend the canvas out to like, well, let's have a big flashback to to an ancient time in Ireland, or let's have somebody physically attack you, or and it allowed us to do so much. And then we've never had anybody complain saying like, oh, that should have been animated, or that should have been more detailed, or more. It somehow just the trick of the static characters in the 3D scenes, and then the panels coming in, just works for people.
No, 100%. Because it never. I think because of the mechanic of it, right? Like because it's detective, and with the deduction, and there's a certain like slowness, that comes with that. That I think it allows you to just appreciate it and like look at things, and not I don't know, like there's something about it. Just all feels very appropriate. It feels very fitting. Like it feels I don't need them to be like it'd be like the fact that the characters are where they are. Like it'd be weird if they were all walking around. You know what I mean? With
Yeah.
that kind of over thing, that would something like that would break me out of it. Where I'd be a bit like, oh, okay, like they're kind of because with that with the billboarding and having the kind of like trying to like make the animation move, but at the same time, like trying to catch all perspectives as you walk around them and that kind of thing. But instead, it just by having it all, well, it has. Like, I think the game has a certain theatrical quality to it, and I think that element with the art style amplifies and creates that theatrical sense to it. So the way that players come onto the way of like now I'm talking to this person, and like now it's like this scene or in this room. So I quite like that way that's all yeah, that's all part of it. It's the experience feels very trying to think of a smart way of putting this, but it feels like as it should be, if that's how I could say it. Like
Yeah, I understand, and
yeah.
thank you very much. So like, I think there's probably a few other things in there which are probably elevating as well. Like so, like there's a so it has that kind of that charm to it that you're talking about. Like it's almost like a hammer horror charm in some ways to it. But the time system adds a sort of sense of pressure, but so does the sound design and music. So like you feel there's an urgency to it without it being exciting, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. You're not sneaking people, you're not chasing people down hallways, or
Exactly,
sneaking
yeah.
behind that. Like, but you feel a pressure. You can feel time ticking by. You can feel there's a sense of dread that you must solve things, and there's I think there's just a lot of sensory stuff going on there in terms of like just good balance of like just the type of music and the type of sound, and that's all credit to our composer and our sound designer. There were two great lads who did that, and you mix that in with the time pressure on top of it. Like you have to make the right choices. Time matters, and then the odd little subtle jump scares here and there.
Yeah, of course.
It became a great little package for Dread, and spookiness.
Well, I mean, yeah, completely agree. I'm just just mindful of the time because obviously we are fitting into very gratefully into the Cerebral showcase time slot here. But is there anything I could talk about this for ages? I've got so many questions, but just to give you a shot, is there anything which for the game being out now and the response and what we're talking about, is there anything you would like to particularly highlight, or anything which for the development you think hasn't been um, got the attention it should have yet so far?
Um, yeah, it's probably been highlighted enough in a lot of reviews.
Mm,
But as we're talking a lot through here, we're talking a lot about like the technicalities and the vibes and all that kind of stuff. But I think the story probably needs to be called out.
mm,
Um, the like it's a fascinating example of great writing. Like I love our writer Dave. He's one of my best friends. He's a great lad, and he has a magic to him that he's just able to pull these uh very deep emotional stories, very uh well structured and caring stories that are full of heart, and you can love bastards that he's written. He's so good. Um, and I think some of that kind of gets lost behind the detective mechanics. Many people have played our games and have really called out some of the stories and say how much they love them. But I'd love to celebrate that. I think it's such a rich bed of story. Um, so yeah, if
yeah,
nothing else, it's a great story and it's full of great, rich characters, which are not there's nothing feels saccharine or artificial about it. Every link between characters, every moment of dialogue is has been well considered and well looked after by our chief writer Dave.
yeah. I mean, well, I can attest to that because the writing is like just for how many different characters there are as well, and yet the dialogue feels sharp and it feels totally engaging. Like you believe all the characters. So um, yeah, I think yeah, really good call.
Yeah, I mean, we had a few writers on it as well. Just called there was other
Okay, sure,
writers on it,
sure.
but like he's the chief guy
Yeah.
behind a lot of stuff, and he has a certain magic to him. Like so, not to belittle the work of anyone else, they did
No, no,
great as
no.
well. Darcy and Leia were the two other writers who helped him out on it, but
Yeah,
his
amazing.
work though is stellar and everything he touches. So I'd call him out as a great writer.
Well, I think it's a great way to wrap up to say, to yourself, but the whole team of everyone who from Spooky Door who's worked on this game. I'm very excited to see it through to the end, but it's not only is it fantastic, it's also, if I'm right, on sale right now as part of the Cerebral Puzzle Showcase.
It's part of a Raw Fury's publisher sale at the moment,
Okay,
but
okay,
it is featured in the Cerebral showcase as well at the same
yes.
time, which is good.
Yeah, so which is great, and you can get it. So you can get it cheaper. You can get it now. If anyone has not played it, I absolutely recommend it. But it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Paul. Yeah, so many interesting things, and just thanks very much for hanging out and having this chat.
Thanks for having me, Murray. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, cheers, and for everyone else, enjoy the rest of the streams on the showcase, and definitely check out more Thinky and Puzzle games. And yeah, until then, keep on spinning.